they sort of look like your clients, right? Or the parents of your clients. At any rate, I did that for a few years, and then I actually did adult. So for a while, when I first started working in juvenile dependency law, I was working out of the Alameda County Public Defender's Office, and they had a newly formed juvenile dependency unit, and we represented kids unless the office had a conflict, because it was a public defender's office. So there were plenty of times where they already had the parent in on a crime in the criminal side. And so in those cases, we would represent the parent, which was really a great way to learn, because the best way to become a good advocate is to argue for the other side. Huh. So you really saw all sides of the spectrum. And you also gained a lot of compassion and insight into what drove people to harm their children, to get on drugs, to, not be the best parent that they could be. So it was an incredible learning experience. It was very intense. It was very hands-on, a lot of experience, you get thrown into the lion's den, a lot of experience very quickly. But again, as I was saying, for me, I kind of reached a point of burnout, and I give a lot of credit to people that work in that field and continue to work in that field. I think it's really yeoman's work, as they say. It's tough, and there's not enough resources in the system and all of that. I couldn't do it for more than a few years. And that's when eventually I remembered that I had taken a family law class in law school that I just loved. And so I started training in family law, and that's when I pivoted into family law. Right. And that was in about 2001.
Mm-hmm. Esther, you touched in a part there about the emotional aspect of that. How did you do as a younger person to just kind of guard your feelings and emotions, because each story must be so heartbreaking and compelling. So how did you do to just kind of maybe not to think about it all the time, or not to get so involved that you didn't have perspective? What were your tools for that early on?
I think it was helpful that I didn't have my own kids at that time. I was single and, no children. I really threw myself into my work. I remember that period of time working at the Alameda County Public Defender's Office in the Juvenile Dependency Unit as being very intense. We had a core group of people that we worked together, we trained together, and they had a really great training for us in the beginning. And then we were each other's support. So we would go out to lunch, and we would sometimes meet in the evenings and talk about our cases and talk about what was so hard. We had amazing mentors in that office, people that I'm grateful to this very day, because they really, taught us how to be good advocates. And I had a life, I was young in my 20s, so I had friends, and I was, I've always been a runner. To me, running is a great stress relief to this day. So that was something I did. I think I was training for my first marathon around that time. So that was kind of a way of finding balance. But like I said, for me, it kind of reached a point where it was just too much. It was like what you see when you work in that field is a constant barrage of like horrible pain, human pain and suffering. So family law looks like a cakewalk after that. It's just ordinary people going through a tough time,
right? Generally
without the drugs, the addiction, the abuse, the neglect. Generally, sometimes that comes into play.
Right. So you also mentioned about mentors. Like any person that you remember that really marked your life, or any advice that you got during that time that kind of still lives with you, or any story that you still remember up to today that was just like, wow, that was really a life lesson for me at that time?
Yeah, well, at that time, I remember my mentors' names, Kathy, Dominic, and Calvin. Wherever you are out there, if you hear this, you know, you were amazing teachers and mentors to us group of rookie attorneys. Um, Particular advice, I don't remember any kind of particular advice. The work was so kind of focused and purposeful that it was really the training and the mentorship was around how do you manage these cases. What I do remember is that they brought in different resources for us. So we had, I remember learning a lot about child development at the time. I remember reading a book about ADD called Driven to Distraction, which was a great book that helped me understand when I represented children that had ADD, you know, what was going on for them and what their needs were. They hooked us up with or maybe we found, actually, I think we reached out, we the attorneys reached out to a psychologist at Children's Hospital who was at the time the department head. And then he came in and did some trainings with us. So we got a lot of resources, you know, that our mentors were amazing in that they really provided a lot of scaffolding and additional resources to help us understand the inner landscape of the people that we were advocating for. And then I've had so many other mentors along the way in family law and at the public defender's office. I also worked at the public defender's office in San Francisco and had a fabulous, amazing mentor who is a dear friend to this day, who was a very spiritual person. And he really taught me a lot about spirituality and kind of connecting to a higher level of inner knowing. And so yeah, good advice. I think that to me, the best advice that I would give to somebody is really follow your bliss. If something doesn't feel right for me, there was a certain breaking point where it just wasn't giving me joy anymore to work as a child advocate. And then when I worked as a public defender for a brief stint doing adult criminal trials, the same thing. I kind of felt like I had to prove something. There was a certain macho aspect to being, you know, an adult PD doing adult crime. And I did it for a while. I got something out of it. And then I kind of reached a breaking point where, you know, it wasn't following my bliss anymore. And so that's when I made a shift and actually did some other things along the way before I ended up doing family law, which to be honest, Daniela, I'm at another one of those transition points. I've been sort of transitioning out of litigation and into doing other things in the last couple of years. So I'm still practicing law. My bar card is active and I'm helping clients, but the pieces of it that no longer served me, that I didn't feel like I was bringing my best self to, that I wasn't joyful about doing anymore, I'm cutting those out.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Wow, good for you. Good for you, Esther. I work with a lot of women in their 40s and 50s that are just kind of waking up to a different part of themselves, and they're making that change, and to, you know, waking up the courage, because it takes courage after especially in our society, after a certain age, to just like, you know what, this is not serving me anymore, and I'm not serving it. So I want to transition into doing something else. So
you're right. It is a kind of courage, and it also tends to happen in midlife. And I think it's also, there's an aspect of like, I always think of like those, remember those old cartoons where the cartoon character would go running and running and running and running, and then they get to the edge of the cliff, but they keep on running because they didn't realize the ground wasn't. You're sort of at a place where you're at career proficiency, you know, mid-career professionals, good at what they do. And you just kind of keep doing it because it's what you know, without realizing that like the ground really isn't underneath, like you're not in that place that you want to be anymore. The landscape has shifted. And so it's kind of it's almost like golden handcuffs, like where you've got the level of expertise and skill that it's easy to keep doing what you're doing. And for sometimes it's right to do that. For some people, you know, they continue to get a lot out of what they were doing. But it does take a level of courage and sort of self-knowledge and kind of a meta-analysis. You got to kind of look outside yourself and say, hey, is this still right for me? to be able to do that calculus and figure out that you want to change.
Right, right. I always say, like, if you're not following your dream, you're following somebody else.
I
If you're
love
not building something for yourself, you're helping somebody else build something for them. And that happens with younger people. That's why I asked you, do you have any other lawyers in your family? Is that some kind of family business? Because there are a lot of young people that are doing what their parents' dream is for them, and not necessarily. And then again, takes courage to say, that I want to be doing something else. So tell me, what are you transition into or wanting to transition into, Esther?
Well, that's a great question. I'm still trying to kind of figure that out. One thing that became clear to me a few years ago was I wasn't enjoying litigating anymore. There was so much stress. And the sort of thrill of it had already worn off years before. And so I don't do that anymore. I still really enjoy mediating and coaching and counseling clients, and some of the drafting. I actually enjoy drafting contracts, like certain types of contracts, which is kind of weird, but like I think that's the wordsmither English major part of me. So I still do that. And I actually love writing. And so that's part of why I'm working toward getting this book finished, which has been an idea that's been in my mind for too many years. So really time to birth it. And exploring really other things, other creative sides of myself that have been either suppressed or expressed through the law, depending on which lens you want to put on it. But now that I'm no longer, interested in those areas, so I take singing lessons, and I'm, developing my singing ability. And when I was a kid, I always loved painting and drawing, and so I'm wanting to get back into that. So I am sort of like open to whatever's coming. A couple of years ago, a research project landed in my lap, and I worked on this very interesting research project with a great team. And that article was published last year, almost a year ago, in May of 2020. And so that was just something that I couldn't have anticipated, but it was on a fascinating topic. It was the interaction of psychology and the law. It was about high conflict personalities in family law. And, so I'm sort of open to see what will happen next.
And was that a catalyst for that? Was there a point that you remember a couple of years ago when you said, you know what? I am in that shift again. I'm shifting. Was there something that happened, or was just one day you woke up and like, I don't think this fits me so well?
It was a little bit of a wake-up call. Thank God, not a terrible health catastrophe or anything. But I was having so much stress that particular year. I remember my heart would be pounding. Like I'd wake up in the morning and my heart was pounding, and I didn't know what was going on. I actually ended up going to a cardiologist to figure it out. And the cardiologist, after doing like the stress test and everything, practically laughed me out of her office and said, you have the heart of a 17-year-old. Your problem isn't physiological. It's stress. You got to, really kind of get rid of some of those stressors. So yeah, it was that. And I, at that same time, I always find that like when you take a step forward in the direction you want to go, the universe starts to meet you halfway or more. Right at that time that I made that conscious decision that I wasn't going to keep, the running thing, the metaphor that I was referencing earlier. It turned out that the office where I was renting space in San Jose, they sold the building. And so we had to be out of there anyway. So it was almost like a scroll unfurling from the heavens telling me, yes, this is the right time, go move, And so I did, and I built this cute little office that I'm in our back. I mean, not me, I hired someone to build it, but I'm in my little she shed in my backyard, and I work out of my backyard. And so when COVID and the lockdowns happened, I had already been doing that for 2 years. It didn't feel very different, but that was sort of the wake-up call. And I think sometimes it comes that way for people. They get something much worse than what happened to me. They actually have like a serious health crisis. that is the turning point.
Right, right. Interesting. So I don't want to dissuade anybody to go into law because of stress, but tell me more about like I like the first part of the earlier part of a career, I could see how it would be stressful with that, you know, parents who are in drugs and dealing with their children, how they took care of the children. But now family law, this kind of mid part of your life that you're talking about, I wouldn't think that it's so stressful. What can you just kind of enlighten us a little bit more about what is stressful about the job? I'm just thinking about new career, younger people going to it, just kind of being aware of it, not being,
Yeah.
stopped from doing it, but just kind of how they can take care of themselves as well.
There's a platitude in the law that, and having done criminal law and then family law, I think this is so apropos. There's this saying that criminal law judges see bad people at their best, and family law judges see good people at their worst.
Mm.
And even though it's an oversimplification, I think there's some truth to that. There's a kernel of truth to that, where people, when they're going through a divorce, it ranks as one of the highest stress things in somebody's life, akin to a death. It is a death of a sort, because it's the death of your relationship, your dreams about that relationship, your expectations, and so on. And so it brings out the worst in people. You get people in sort of that fight or flight mode. And again, not everybody, different
Right.
people manage it differently. And you get a whole range in family law of reactions and responses. But because people are fighting for their lives, or it feels to them like they're fighting for their lives, perspective can get skewed. You can have the biggest fight about the spoons, right? And children, obviously, big hot button topic, because parents are used to being with their children 100% of the time. And when they're going through a divorce, they're going to have to share custody, and they're not going to be with their children 100% of the time. And so that becomes a fighting ground. And so there's just so many factors that go to people's sense of identity, safety, survival, that all fold into family law, and that cause these extreme emotions and therefore high stress for everybody.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And you said that one of your tools or running, correct? Just keeping exercise running as a tool to keep your stress level down. Did you do anything else?
I meditate every day.
Okay.
I do yoga as much as I can.
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
Yeah, it was actually my mentor at the public defender's office in San Francisco many years ago who introduced me to the concept of meditation, and gave me a gift of a lifetime. I think meditation and grounding and really connecting to your own inner wisdom and really calming your whole nervous system down is an important skill for everybody to have.
Oh, that is great. Yeah, I agree. I think that is that grounding and that just calming down the chatterbox, how the thoughts and just kind of so just the meditation to just kind of being quiet so you can actually listen to things that are deeper within them, within oneself.
Exactly. Do you meditate, Daniela?
I do meditate, and that is very helpful to me. I did last year. I was being so good with the whole COVID and the yoga, meditation, yoga. This year I haven't been able to go back to the yoga yet. So, but the meditation, 15 minutes in the morning, and sometimes just in the middle of the day where I'm kind of feeling a little bit flustered and kind of getting out of my equilibrium because there's, my to-do list and I'm looking at the clock and I haven't got through things yet. And then just kind of stopping myself, and just sometimes it's even 3 or 4 minutes, a couple times a day where just like, okay, Just need to just come back to my center here, and then I can see things a little bit more clearly.
Absolutely. That's amazing. And can I share with you, speaking of yoga, can I share with you my latest discovery? It's a great hack for you and anybody else who's listening, who's interested.
Please, by all means.
Okay, the Insight Timer app. Are you familiar with this app?
No, I'm not.
It's a free app. I mean, there's a membership possibility if you want to choose that. It's a free app called Insight Timer.
Uh-huh.
And I've been using it for several years. And I just recently discovered that they have these live events every day. I think almost every day you can find a live yoga class.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's free. I mean, you can donate. There's a donation button. And they have some great teachers there. So if you're missing your yoga classes and you're not able to get to your gym or your yoga studio or whatever because of COVID or whatever, check out the Insight Timer live yoga classes. They're great.
That is a bonus. Thank you so much, Esther. Oh, good. And so I was also thinking how, especially right after law school, taking the bar exam, and how was that process for you?
It was hard. I failed the bar the first time I took it. Yeah, I did not take it seriously enough. And I had just a lot of things going on, finishing law school, breaking up with my boyfriend at law school at the time. And I think I was just kind of burnt out of studying. And so then I really focused and took myself in hand and worked really hard and studied, and I passed the second time. But for the bar exam, for the listeners who are, either pre-law school or post-law school or pre-bar, if you're just about to face the bar, my best advice, the California bar is notoriously hard. It's one of the few 3-day bars. A lot of the states in the United States are 2 days. California is, I think, considered still one of the hardest bars. I know the year that I took it, it was, the very low passage rate. Just set aside 3 months at least. For me, 3 months, I think, was about right. And I don't even know that I did a lot the first month, but the month before the bar, just to really just study. And I had posters up in my apartment and index cards. It's funny that you're asking me this question. It's sending me back so many years, but I can bring up that picture. I remember I had like all the elements, things you need to remember, because you need to remember things for the bar exam that you don't need to remember for practice. And it's kind of funny because, in law school is somewhat disengaged from the bar. The bar is somewhat disengaged from practice. So sometimes you're lucky and you have, like, my family law teacher in law school was a practicing lawyer in Sacramento. So we got really practical, hands-on kind of learning from her. But a lot of times you're learning more theoretical things and you're having these interesting discussions in class and analyses, but they're not so related to what you do in that field in practice. And the same thing for the bar. The bar is just something you got to get through. Some of it you might end up remembering and using in whatever practice area you pick, but it's a lot of work, a lot to stuff into your brain, a lot to remember. So just give yourself that time, sufficient time to prepare. Don't take it lightly like I did the first time.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I can only imagine that one is very theoretical. It's like as the book, and and then there's real life experience that sometimes might be in dissonance with each other, correct?
Exactly. And then there's all these things that you learn when you're in practice if you're a litigating attorney, like the local rules, and you want to get to know how different judges work, what their clerks prefer in different presentation of evidence and whatnot. So there's a lot of things that you can't learn in law school. It's stuff that you just have to learn on the job.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And Esther, what is usually the path? You go to college, then law school, you do the bar exam, and then what is the path after that?
Well, then you start working pretty much. If you pass the bar exam, you can practice law. Sometimes people, they start working before they get their bar results, and they're just working under an attorney. So they have to be sort of supervised. I don't think they can appear in court at that point without an attorney appearing with them. And I think people can pick different paths. Sometimes people come out of law school with such big debt that they just need to go work at a firm where they can earn enough money to pay off their debt. That's one typical path. Another path is like more of the thing that I did, where you work at a public defender's office or a district attorney's office, and you just get a ton of experience. And to me, that was very helpful because I learned through doing. And so you just get thrown in, and it's trial by fire. And I remember my second month on the job, I was cross-examining a psychology expert in a juvenile dependency case, and it was an amazing experience. So I think it really depends on what you want to do, but there are different paths you can take, depending on how you want to get to your end goal. You're generally going to start working. You can start working as soon as you have your law degree. You can actually theoretically hang up a shingle and open your own firm.
Okay.
I wouldn't recommend that because I think you need to get some experience under your belt. But
and during the time that somebody's going through the through law school, do they have some kind of internships? Do they get some internships? Do they have to have certain hours of internships to graduate? I don't know anything about law. I don't know how close to psychology it is, if you have to do any of that.
That's an excellent question. And I have always felt like it should be more closer to psychology and medicine, where you have to have a required number of, working. You have to get some hands-on in the field experience. When I was in law school, that was not a requirement. I don't think it is today. I did it because I just sought out internships because I did the same thing in college. When I was in college, like my first year in college, I think I was working. I went to college in New York City, and I got a job at a magazine because I wanted to write articles, So I think that getting that experience in law school is a great idea, and there are lots of options to do that. And if you don't do it during the school year, you could also do it over the summertime. There's a lot of nonprofit agencies that love to get help from new attorneys or people in law school who are studying to become attorneys. At UC Davis, where I went, we also had an immigration law clinic, which I used to volunteer for. And that was another great experience because, I had also volunteered at Sacramento Child Advocates. That was one of the first things I sought out, first year of law school. And then by my second year, when you're in your second year of law school, after you've taken evidence, and I want to say civil procedure, you can appear in court under the wing of an attorney. So I was already making court appearances first semester of my second year of law school. And that was just a great way to get my feet wet and kind of see what it would be like to be a courtroom lawyer. And I also volunteered at the immigration law clinic. UC Davis has a great immigration law clinic. They do some amazing work with undocumented immigrants. And there too, I got to have hands-on experience in immigration court. So I think you can find, I'm trying to remember if I did other internship types of things. You can find, I'm sure wherever you go to law school, you can find hands-on experiences either within your law school or outside at nonprofit organizations that assist the poor.
Oh, okay. And so I have two more questions. One has to do you think being a female has helped you at all within the law firm, family law, or like, did you feel, was it a benefit, or do you think it's a very still kind of male world to get into professionally?
My experience, Daniela, is that it really wasn't. By the time I went to law school, this was in the mid-90s, 50% of my class was female. And I remember that was commensurate with what I was hearing at other law schools. So I think that there are so many women in the law now. It's not, even if you had gone to law school in the 1980s, I think it would have been different. I think today there's a lot of, there's complete access. There's no discrimination. You don't get kind of what you hear Ruth Bader Ginsburg experienced, where she was invited to a dean's dinner for first year law students or something like that, or for the women, and the dean asked them, why are you taking a place that should have been occupied by a man, right? None of that exists anymore. Women are your teachers, they're judges, they're, in my field in family law, I don't have any hard numbers, but it seems like at least 50% of the family law attorneys are women, if not more. I think the benefits of family law is also, it seems to be more family friendly. So if you're raising your own family, what I have noticed and experienced is that judges, and again, this is all anecdotal, it's not, I haven't gotten hard numbers on this, but that judges seem to be more amenable to the fact that if you say, oh, judge, I'm not available, Wednesday afternoon at 3, my daughter has a performance and blah, 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 or I'm chaperoning a field trip or something like that, there's a little bit more flexibility than you get in traditional civil law, and maybe criminal law as well. So at any rate, I didn't find being a female to be a barrier at all. I think being a female is a superpower. So, yeah.
So you've been practicing since 2001, so it's been 20 years. Now that you have that hindsight, that 20 vision, like, would there be something that you do differently? Like when you said you'd have studied much more for the first bar exam,
yes.
But is there anything that looking back you would have done differently in your career?
The one thing I would say, if I could tell my younger self, and it's not even so much with my law career, but I would tell her, in college and in law school, don't be so intimidated and afraid of the teachers. Form relationships with them, because mentorship is one of the best ways to grow in your career and as a person. And I was lucky to have amazing mentors in my career. I think I could have had amazing mentors even earlier if I had connected more with some of my professors and teachers, both in college and law school. And I did connect with some of them, but I think I underutilized the opportunity. So that's would be my advice to, people at the start of their career, whether they're before college or before law school or other professional school, or whether they've already finished their studies and they're starting their careers, like really seek out and cultivate mentors. And people who are mid-career or later career professionals, in general, I like talking to younger lawyers about my work and helping them and, sharing with them. And if somebody doesn't, they'll make it clear pretty quickly. So don't be shy. That's my advice.
Okay, good. Okay, we are almost at the end of our hour here together. And tell me a little bit more about your upcoming book.
Oh, so it's a self-help book. It's called Transformative Divorce. It's really not legalistic at all. It has nothing to do with the stuff you see on the shelf behind me. It's not a treatise or anything like that. It's really about how to go through the difficulty, walk through the fire, say, of divorce in a way that's going to promote your greatest growth. And I really believe that the toughest things in life are the opportunities for our biggest breakthroughs and transformation and our biggest growth. And the book is intended to guide the reader through a series of exercises to help them do that, to help them grow and kind of come out of on the other side with a better life vision, and a stronger sense of self.
Wow, Esther, thank you so much. That probably is one book that people that are going through that moment in their lives probably can really use it. right? And more not just from the law side of it, because they have people to take care of it, but how do they take care of themselves, and how do they talk about it?
I hope so. That's the intent. I hope it helps a lot of people.
So thank you so much for your time.
Sure. Thank you, Daniela.
Yes, and you be well, and I hope our paths cross again.
Likewise. That would
Not
be
for divorce. I'm not asking for divorce or anything like that.
at a meditation retreat. How about that?
There we go. Meditation at the app that you mentioned, the Insight Timer, in your yoga class.
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay. Thank you so
right.
much. You have a good day, Esther.
You do the same. Thanks, Daniela.
You take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
And thank you so much to our audience today. I'm sorry about the little technical, this is real life. This is life on Facebook, so those things do happen. But thank you so much for sticking with us and being with us. And one of the things that I got from our conversation with Esther today is just really how to take care of oneself. There are moments of stress in life, and learn what works for you. If you're going through at the at tests at school, end of the year, tests, or writing up theses and essays or dissertation, uh, just really not allow the stress and the amount of the to-do list to take over. Go for a run, sit down for meditation. There are great apps on meditation as well. Esther just told us about Insight Timer. That is a yoga meditation. It's a yoga app. So there's other ways that we can come back to the center, and even during the day, even in traffic, when people may be losing it, to just kind of breathe and go back to themselves. I wish you all a good week, and Anita is going to be with you here next week. I am one of the mentors for Career Up Now, and I help people in transition, life transition, as well as career transition, midlife transition, going, from what they were doing and into, something new in their life. So be well and have a good week. Take good care. Bye-bye.